Yo, what's poppin'? It's your girl Z, aka Zalia. Welcome back to the wonders of the human experience. We got motherfucking episode 11, authentic versus performative you, boundaries, discernment, and the art of remembering yourself. This is a very expansive topic, and we're gonna get right into it because it's gonna get deep real quick. So get your popcorn, get you something to drink, get you something to write with as well, get you some pen and paper, and without further ado, let's get on right into it. Okay, so I want to talk about how I even came about this topic. Like, how did this topic even start? Because for a minute, I've been wanting to talk about authenticity on my channel just because a lot of people have like questions about it. A lot of people want to have a better understanding about what it means to be authentic. And I didn't really know how to quite, start it. Like, I had some points, but it didn't really give me like a great way how to get into the topic. But lo and behold, how, divine alignment works. I was on a TikTok live, this creator that I normally watch whenever I can. Happened about a week ago or so. And what are the odds that she's talking about authenticity? And I'm like, oh shit, like this is perfect. Like, hell yeah, okay. So a few seconds I'm in there, right? Just a few seconds, not even that long. She goes and she says, when you're being authentic, boundaries aren't needed. And she was saying how the only thing that you truly need is discernment. And she was given this example that people are friends with, like, she gave this example like this. Like, she said, when you're friends with somebody and you're the particular friend that's always doing a particular thing. So let's say you're the friend that's always planning events, right? You're the friend that's always planning, or you're always doing something very specific, right? Very routine, very much so fixed, very much so kind of rigid. I think that's the word for it. I hope so. Don't quote me, but very much so a fixed thing. Like, and I'm like, what does that have to be? And she was saying, like, that's why some people mess up with their friendships, because they start doing this one particular thing and then they stop doing it, and then they wonder why the friendship starts to, unravel. And I'm like, wait. Hold on. Wait. There was just so much that was coming to me. I'm like, hold on. Okay, let's really get into this. So let's dissect, the first portion about her saying how all we need is discernment and that boundaries aren't necessary. I want to let y'all know that boundaries is your inner wisdom. It's your inner compass. It's that inner voice that you hear, right? This is your inner navigational system. Like, this is your intuition. This is literally how you are intuitively picking up on energy, those gut feelings. You know what I'm saying? That's what discernment is. Now, boundaries, and also I want to add, discernment is the yin aspect of you. This is your feminine aspect of you. Boundaries is your external way of expressing that discernment, right? Ooh, confirmation. Let's go. Excuse me. That had to come through real quick. But yeah, like, discernment is your external expression. This is how you are honoring that internal wisdom, that inner voice of yours that's speaking to you, right? That gut feeling. This is how you are acting on that, right? That's what boundaries are. So let's give a quick example, and I'm going to use myself as an example because y'all know I'd love to talk about personal experiences, right? So There have been a few times where I have had off feelings about someone, right? And I want to firstly use like examples of like my relationships romantically and platonically with women, because I'm gonna be very honest. When it comes to men, when my discernment tells me something, I'm like, okay, no. I'm very much so like very strict with men, because I feel like we all can agree that men, y'all be on some shit. But that's not to say or negate that women don't be on shit either. And I feel like when it comes to women, we are very much so more open to, receiving. We're very much so more open to allowing them to get away with doing things. Or at least personally, I definitely was. So my boundaries were very strong with men, but when it came to women, oh baby, my boundaries were not there. They damn near was not there. And it got me in trouble. It got me quite a bit in trouble. And I can say for a fact that I've always had those intuitive nudges, and I've always had those moments of when my inner voice was telling me things. Even like in my dreams, I would see certain things about the women that I would talk to or be friends with or be around. And more specifically, let's talk about, an ex-best friend of mine. Me and her were quite good friends, and, it was kind of toxic because it was more so like a trauma bond than anything. But when I started to go through like my spiritual awakening, I want to say about almost 4 years ago, I started to like feel the difference between someone draining you versus like somebody like pouring into you. And I started to notice how she would always call me in moments when she was, in those low moments, like when she always needed some type of pick me up energy, and she knew that she could call me, and she knew that if I answered the phone that she would have, somebody to pour or to get energy from, pretty much. Like she was like, low-key an energy vampire. I'm not gonna hold you. That's exactly what she was. And I started to feel exactly when my energy was getting drained, which is, the discernment. That's the discernment part. So my body is feeling depleted. My body is feeling the response from the energy that's going on, right? So that's the example of the discernment. I didn't get to a point where I actually acted on that discernment until like maybe a few months later, when I just couldn't take it anymore. I was like, man, I hate this feeling of being constantly drained by you. And I started honoring that shit. Even though, she would get upset. She would get mad if I didn't answer the phone. She would get very upset with me, and she would say the craziest fucking things like, oh, you don't care about me, or, people will start to gaslight you, and they will start to say very manipulative things because you are revoking access so they can't take from you, right? So that's kind of what happens when you start standing on boundaries. And this is also what happens when you have discernment but you don't have boundaries, which is why I had such a problem with her saying that. It didn't sound correct. Like, you need both. You need both. And then her talking about how, like, if you change, like the example she gave, like you were the set person, the set friend that was always doing that, but because you changed, that's somewhat like you not being authentic. And that too didn't make any sense, because here's the thing: when it comes to being authentic, it's not some fixated thing. It's not something that is it's like a one-way thing to do. Like, I didn't really quite understand what she was trying to get at, but that's kind of like the energy that I was picking up on. Like, you're this one thing and that's the only thing that you are. And that's not realistic. That's not true. That's not how life is. You know what I'm saying? Our entire experience down here is about change. It's about constantly changing. It's about constantly transforming, evolving, constantly evolving. We are in a constant state of change, right? So for her to say, because you stopped doing such and such, that means you're not being authentic. And it didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense. Like, to me, it's like you can't ignore the reality of growth. You can't call someone fake for actually realizing and actually listening to that discernment that she spoke about, but say that they're not authentic because they're enforcing and acting off that said discernment. Like, all because you're finally enforcing that boundary, all of a sudden you're not authentic. That doesn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? So it's like authenticity is more about you becoming more real and not necessarily becoming less than you, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? It's not a fixed thing. Authenticity is very fluid, and your boundaries are sacred. They're not selfish, right? And here's another thing I want to talk about. Another reason why I didn't like her saying that, boundaries aren't needed is because a lot of times we find ourselves in situations and in particular experiences with people, places, or things that are bringing us harm. It can be very abusive experiences. It can be very, taxing, draining experiences. And because our lack of boundaries within, because of our lack of saying no, because of our lack of standing up for ourselves, because of our lack of not having a backbone and standing up for what's right, we get ourselves in these situations, and we stay in these situations far too long. Just like the example I gave earlier with my ex-best friend. I was in that relationship way longer than what I really needed to be, because I was scared that I was being selfish. And once again, these people will use manipulative and gaslighting tactics. They will make you feel like you're being selfish because you want to protect yourself. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, for me, there aren't a sense of boundaries when the energy is an equal exchange. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can be honest right now, I'm in alignment with my soul family, and I don't really have boundaries with them. So to a certain extent, she is low-key right. But that's for people that are maybe in a particular energy within themselves where their foundation is much so, very true to thyself, and they know thyself, and they have a lot of like that sovereigntiness to where they can also attract that. So I can understand why, and to a certain degree, authenticity, you won't necessarily need boundaries. But this is for people, like I said, like when you're in alignment with your soul family, you will find yourself not really having boundaries. You can be openly expressive. You can be whatever you want to be, because you will understand that it's a resonance when it comes to those people. You're very open to those people, and you can show up authentically and not feel like you have to protect yourself to a certain degree. But what happens when you are interacting with people that aren't your soul family? Like, your soul family aren't going to be the only people that you talk to on this earth. What happens then? Those boundaries are still going to be needed. It might not be, useful in terms when it comes to, people that you resonate with. But what happens when you meet people that aren't in alignment with you? What happens to people that aren't necessarily on the same frequency as you? What happens when you meet somebody that don't have an expansive mind as you? You know what I'm saying? There will be some form of conflict, and you need to somewhat learn how to, quote unquote, not fold. You know what I'm saying? Not to internalize what you don't resonate with. Because a lot of times when we meet people that are on, in terms of like different frequencies, different consciousness, it's achievable to share space with people that may have a more closed-minded way of thinking. It's very much so possible, but at the same time, when I speak on this conflict that you're gonna have with those people, it's gonna more so be in terms of them trying to persuade you, them trying to tell you that you're wrong, right? Because a lot of times when I deal with people that are very closed-minded, it's very much so, you're right, I'm wrong, you're right type of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, these people are here to prove something. These people are trying to teach you a quote unquote lesson. You know what I'm saying? These people are here to tell you that your truth isn't your truth. They're here to tell you that your way of expression isn't acceptable. And when you meet those people, what are you going to do? You know what I'm saying? And this is where boundaries come into play. Because when you go with your soul family, you don't have to worry about that shit. I don't have to worry about that. But when I'm speaking with people that don't necessarily resonate, or they don't necessarily have that expansive way of thinking or an expansive consciousness, they're more limited. There will be times where I can't necessarily, well, I won't say I can't, but in those moments, in those very moments when I'm interacting with people like that, I have to remind myself to be very observing, because you can kind of get caught up in the mind and you may feel as if there's something wrong with you. And in terms of things that you don't resonate with, it's super important to not internalize that. If you don't even like who that person is, their character, if you don't like their personality, why are we listening to stuff like that? You know what I'm saying? Why would we listen to the criticism, the judgments, and the opinions of people that we don't even want to be like? So in terms of like that is perfectly where boundaries are needed. They are a necessity, because that is how we protect ourselves from people that don't necessarily have the best intentions for us. So that's why I couldn't, really wholeheartedly agree with this ideal that you being authentic means you don't have to have boundaries. No, your discernment is your yin. This is your feminine way of operating, right? This is only half of you. Your boundaries is your yang. This is your masculine energy. This is your ability to express and exert your actions from your feminine energy. So there is a balance that has to play out with this. There is a sense of wholeness that plays into this. You need both. Okay, so let's get into the performative aspect of us. This is where the conditioning on a societal view, this is how it's generally played out, right? It starts in our childhood. It starts very early in our childhood, where we are taught to be less expressive. We are taught to be less sensitive. We are taught to not feel things very deeply, right? We are told that if we share certain expressions of ourselves, that people won't like us, that we won't have friends, or we won't get along with people because we're too much. You know what I'm saying? Like, that performative behavior is often a trauma response. It's a response to keep ourselves safe, or what we think it's keeping us safe from people that are being performative too. Let's be real. Like, this is what happens. Everyone is operating and expressing and responding to life from a level they are within themselves. So 9 times out of 10, if there are people telling you not to express yourself a certain way, if they have a problem with you expressing yourself a certain way, if they are getting mad at you for not being performative, because a lot of times, especially like coming from my own personal experience, when I'm not always in my happy mood and I'm not always smiling, people don't like that. They always tell me, you need to smile more, or you should smile, or try smiling and try being happy, like try being fake happy. And it's like, what's wrong with me feeling my emotions? What's wrong with me not being, happy all the goddamn time? And it's like, here's the thing. We're literally taught to not be kind. We're literally taught to not have empathy. We're literally taught to not be expressive, to not be ourselves. And it's so crazy because we had no problem with doing all of these things when we were children, because it's natural. It was a natural part of us. And we are literally taught at such young ages to get rid of that, to abandon that, and to look at it as if it's this strange thing that shouldn't even be a part of us. But it's like, you literally came in the world crying. Most of us came in crying. When you came in, like they show on the TV all the time with the babies crying, when the baby is first being birthed, and when it's coming through the portal, it's crying. It's already expressing a level of emotion. And these people say, oh, don't cry. Like, they tell men all the time, they condition men so much to not feel their emotions, and that they shame men for feeling deeply, and they shame men for crying, and that's a weakness. Like, you crying you're weak. Like, what? It's crazy, right? Men are taught super early on that being sensitive, that you're not a man if you're sensitive. You're not a man if you cry. You're not a man if you aren't ignoring your feelings. And it's weird. It's so weird. It's like, early on, they disconnect men from their yin. They disconnect men from their feminine aspect of themselves. And it's like, people wonder why men be looking for mothers in relationships, why they be looking for people to take care of them in a certain way, because they were told early on that they couldn't do it themselves to a certain degree, that if they did do that was either quote unquote gay, or it wasn't manly enough. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of conditioning that plays a part in this. And it's so crazy because, as children are very impressionable. We're very open and susceptible to many different things because we are learning. Everything around us, we are instinctually learning how to navigate things. So if we are in an environment surrounded by people that are putting on this performative act, they're not actually being authentic themselves, you can imagine that person that's in that environment, when they grow up, they're going to carry on that. So when you're young and people are telling you they don't like when you cry, you're going to sit up there and say, okay, well, I'm not going to cry around this person because that person says that it's not right. They don't accept part of my truth, part of me crying, an aspect of me, because they're, uncomfortable with it, because they don't like it within themselves. So this is how these coping mechanisms, this is how they develop. This is how they develop at a young age. We get around people that are also doing the same thing. They're also being very performative. And they think that they're keeping us safe. But this whole theory that you have to protect yourself, or you have to fake being your true self around people to protect yourself, it's an illusion. It's somewhat of an illusion, because all that is you pretty much abandoning yourself. And it's like, why are we doing that? Why are we choosing to abandon ourselves? And it's like, when you're a child, you don't know no better, because you just fucking got here. You don't know no goddamn better. You know what I'm saying? You don't even know that you're abandoning yourself. You're just quite literally listening to your environment and the people that's in the environment. So you don't actually know that you're abandoning yourself. You just know that you can't act a certain way in front of Miss Shirley, because Miss Shirley always gets on to you when you're crying, or Miss Shirley is always getting on to you when you're laughing, or Miss Shirley is always getting on to you when you're sitting up there in whatever way, however way you are expressing yourself. When people are sitting up there saying they don't like that, they don't accept that, it makes us feel like we have to not be that. Like, we literally can't go around being that part of ourselves because somebody else don't goddamn like it. And that's kind of what we take when we grow up. So this is literally how the coping mechanisms start to develop. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, we have to be extremely mindful when it comes to this. And as you begin to grow, and you begin to develop more, and you begin to experience more, you start to realize how draining it is to put on this act, how draining it is to put on this performance, how draining it is to be fake. And we don't realize how draining it is, how taxing it can be, until we literally get older and we start seeing the effects and the tolls that it takes on our body, the toll that it takes on us mentally, emotionally. And all of these things get stored in the body. The body keeps count. So just because you didn't express how upset you were at that age, that stuff stays in your body. And this is why it's so important to be expressive, to at least let it out. Don't let it sit in your body, because that will fester. It will fester, and it will create resentment. It will create grief. It will create all of these different emotions. And then we wonder why we're upset with people. We wonder why we dislike certain people. We wonder why, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, it's not even the child's fault as to why, they're somewhat resentful. But I can say that as you get older, you do have a part to play as far as healing yourself, because at the end of the day, the only one that's going to save you is you. So it's like, you have to get to a point where you have to reprogram, you have to reteach, you have to reparent yourself from all of the things, all of the performative ways and conditionings that we are taught. And it's quote unquote these safety mechanisms. And it's like, at the same time, who are we keeping safe? Who are we doing this for? Who are we keeping safe for real? Because if I was taught to be performative, and if I'm around a whole bunch of people being performative, and we're all being fake, and we know at the end of the day that it's taxing, that it's draining, who are we really truly protecting? Who are we keeping safe? We're literally teaching each other to reject ourselves and to abandon ourselves, to not have kindness for ourselves, to not have empathy for ourselves. And the reason why, how this ties into what was happening, on the TikTok live that I was talking about earlier, is because here's the thing. we can sit up here and say that, authenticity is important and that we should all be operating from that frequency. But here's the thing. We are not taught to be authentic. Most of us, looking at society, we are not taught that. We're not taught to act from that frequency. We're taught the very opposite of that. So to sit up there and to not have, a little bit of empathy for people that aren't operating from that level just quite yet, and that are still going through the motions of reprogramming themselves and relearning themselves and remembering themselves, because that's what this whole thing about life is. It's a constant process of remembering yourself, and that's what life is. Life is it's here to teach us. It's here to teach us how to reconnect with ourselves. It's here to teach us how to remember who we truly are. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, we can't sit up there and say that, being authentic shouldn't require boundaries, because at a very young age, we aren't taught boundaries. We aren't taught the importance of boundaries. And when we are a bit too open, we can get taken advantage of. You know what I'm saying? A lot of us have been in situations where we've gotten taken advantage of. Like I said earlier, me with that ex-best friend of mine, I was definitely getting taken advantage of. And I had no idea, you know what I'm saying? Until it got to a point where I was fed up and I couldn't take it anymore. So I think it's so important to acknowledge that, yes, discernment is important, but it's just as important as our boundaries. And when it comes to being authentic, you have to first reprogram yourself to be authentic. You have to come back into that remembrance, and that takes patience. It doesn't happen overnight, and you have to at least acknowledge that people are not taught that. We're not taught to be authentic. We have to learn that. We have to come back into that remembrance. But I guarantee you, that's what we were before anyone taught us how to be otherwise. You know what I'm saying? We knew instinctually how to be authentic, how to be truly ourselves as children before we were taught to do the opposite. So it's possible for you to come back into that. It's possible. It takes work, granted. Yes, indeed it does, because the conditioning is so deep, especially when you're young. But it's possible, and it's something that I feel like, we have to be patient with people when it comes down to that. Because, like I said, we ain't taught how to be authentic. Like, yeah, you might got a point, when it comes, like, if we were taught to be authentic from the get-go, then perhaps you're right. We wouldn't have a need for boundaries. But then again, how would we know how to protect ourselves if we didn't go through what we went through in our childhood? Because I can be honest with y'all, I'm very grateful for my childhood. It wasn't the best. It was very abusive, very taxing, very draining. When it comes to family members, when it comes to friendships, when it came to environments, it was very taxing. It was very psychologically abusive, financially, emotionally. It was very much abusive. It was a lot of neglect going on. I didn't have my father around. My mother was very much so unavailable emotionally. So it takes a lot to really reparent yourself. And to sit up there and say that we don't need boundaries that's what keeps us in these toxic cycles. So yes, you do need them. You absolutely do need them. Now, I wanted to share another perspective as to why people may be, performative, and to a certain degree, there are some that say because people have a fear of rejection, they have a fear of, people perceiving them and not being able to control the opinions from others. But there's another perspective that I want to share about being performative. Some people are hyper aware. Some people are we call them empaths, we call them empathic. Some people are so open within like their hearts. They have big hearts. A lot of people that are very hyper aware, they tend to have big hearts, right? And what happens is you grow accustomed to thinking that, you have to be somewhat 10 times ahead or something will go wrong. You feel like you have to internalize everything. So this goes for people's moods, this goes for shifts in their tones or a lack of a response, and you feel like you have to fix or you have to carry or you have to be hyperly aware of everything, right? It's like your nervous system becomes like a surveillance tower. It's not really a sanctuary anymore. It's not really a safe space for you anymore. And now, this is a different aspect of, some people are performative to control. They're performative to control, and it becomes a sense of like an armor for them that keeps them from actually flowing and being more open to who they are. And this is kind of where like the protection mechanism comes from, because they think that they have to constantly, control other people in a sense, or they have to constantly monitor people's emotions and manage everyone else's emotions, right? So it's like, that's another perspective that some people, they may have a challenge with. Some people aren't, because I'll say for me, I'm not really someone that cares about people's opinions. I'm more so concerned about me being entirely too open to the point where I'm absorbing everything. I'm internalizing all of the energy in the room. And this is where, I like to tell people, like, your hyper awareness can be used in a better way, right? So people that can feel energy pretty easily, people that can feel the shifts in the room, people that can, tune in to what's being said on an energetic level. If you switch your perspective from trying to always be, trying to always manage things, right? Switch it from internalizing to observing it, right? So if you were to simply observe, like, oh, okay, that person does that, it kind of switches your mind from going, okay, I'm not in danger, but I'm aware of possibilities. I'm aware of that. Okay, that person does that. That's okay, as long as that person isn't harming me and they're not harming themselves. You don't necessarily have to get involved. I feel like that hyper awareness can be used in our favor, but it requires you to be more observing, right? So this is how, you can switch it from being like a protective mechanism to more so it's like, it's actually becomes discernment. This like hyper awareness can be used as discernment if you really think about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can sit up there and say, okay, I'm aware of that energy. That's not mine, but I do see it. And for now, I choose. You get to choose if you want to engage with the energy or not, versus, okay, that person's doing that. I feel the need to manage them. I feel the need to make sure I do something to, you know what I'm saying? Like, it gives off this energy of wanting to save people. And that's the thing. We are all here to save ourselves. And the minute you start to save yourself and you show other people how they can save themselves, that is how we heal the world. So everybody has like this misconception of how things are going to get better. And it starts with us. It starts with us first. But you have to understand that this observation gives you the freedom of choice instead of, this how can I explain it? Like, this compulsion to manage things, right? You don't have to carry the weight of others. Other people we're all meant to carry the weight of ourselves. You know what I'm saying? We're all meant to, understand and go within and do the work for ourselves. And no one's necessarily meant to do that for us. So when you try to exert yourself like that, that's when it becomes draining. You know what I'm saying? You're not sitting up here constantly, emotionally scanning things, or you're not taking things personally. You're not preparing for harm or reject. You know what I'm saying? You're not micromanaging people or situations or feeling like you have to do something. You know what I'm saying? So when you switch your perspective from, this hyper aware control to being, more observant, it becomes like this calmness, right? It becomes more symbolic. It becomes like you can see like these patterns in people. You can choose to be neutral. You know what I'm saying? And trusting yourself and not feeling like you have to bring a certain outcome to what you're seeing. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense, but you can witness the patterns without engaging or entangling yourself with that energy. You go from I have to do something to I get to choose what's worthy of my energy, of my time, because your time and your energy is precious. You know what I'm saying? So I think that was something that I had to learn, because I never quite resonated with having to thinking that, people were going to judge me, and I really didn't give a damn if people did or didn't. You know what I'm saying? More so for me, it was just that I have a very big heart, and I can feel deeply on an empathetic level, and I do sense things pretty quickly. So I had to learn how to choose where I want to focus my energy, and still, be okay with being aware with, all of these different things going on. But I still get to choose, what's worthy of my time, what's worthy of my energy. And I think that's something huge for, someone that doesn't necessarily resonate with what most people say about being performative. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, let's get to the next part. Now, the very last thing that I want to talk about to kind of conclude this episode is how to truly, and I mean truly, step into this authenticity frequency, how to really radically accept yourself. And the answer is very simple. It's releasing control. It's surrendering to yourself and opening yourself up to the point where you are sharing parts of yourself that you were told not to do. And mind you, you don't have to do this in a grand way. Starting small will help you in a phenomenal way. Just doing little things day by day to really reconnect you to that sense of freedom will really help you a lot. And I want to tell y'all something. If you have a fear of being perceived, or even if you have a fear of being rejected, I want to tell you that it's an illusion. It's not even real, because for you to think that you can control how people perceive you and how people can receive you is an illusion. It's not up to you. It's not something that you can control. Because notice how earlier I said people are operating and making decisions and doing everything to their utmost ability based on the reality, based on the perception, and based on where they are within themselves internally. That has nothing to do with you. How people choose to perceive you is solely based upon them and them only. And this is whether it's a negative thing or positive. But I want you to really understand that this illusion that you're attaching yourself to, it's not real. It's not real as you think it is. And a lot of times people say they have social anxiety. It's because you're trying to control things that you can't control. That's what happens. That's literally what happens when people become anxious. You're trying to control things that are simply out your control. You can't control how people perceive you. You can't. It's literally not possible unless that person thinks that they can be controlled by somebody else. And 9 times out of 10, if people are being judgmental, if they're being very opinionated in a not, good sense, because there's nothing wrong with being opinionated, but if you're using your opinions to police people, then, obviously that's not something that you would want to listen to, right? But at the end of the day, what people say, what people think, what people are doing, that's based on where they are within themselves. You can't control that. So this theory that we have of fearing people, that they're not gonna like us and they're not gonna appreciate us and they're not gonna, it's literally, us being taught to people please. Like, that's what it really is. Like, you were taught to care about the opinions of people that don't even show up for themselves authentically. And it's like, you're told to pretty much care for fucking what? Why would you care? Why do you care? It adds no value to your life. So why are we adding value to it? So that's just my whole thing about, people that may have a fear of being seen. Just know that this fear is an illusion, and it's because you are trying to control things that you simply cannot control. And all you have to do is surrender that. Let that shit go. It doesn't belong to you. It's not even something that you have to hold on to. You were taught to hold on to that because it was a safety coping mechanism. Like, you were taught that was your way of feeling safe, right? That's not what this is. That is not the way to go. And if anything, it's going to lead you down a path where you don't feel satisfied with yourself. And that's not what we're here for. We're here to expand. We're here to liberate ourselves, to become more sovereign. We're here to evolve, to change, to become better. And you're going to have to start with really detaching from what people are going to think. People are going to do it anyways because that's their free will. How people choose to use their free will has nothing to do with how you choose your free will. And with that being said, I'm going to conclude the episode for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it touched your heart. I hope you were able to integrate this fully to your being. And I wish you so much love. You are a sovereign, free being. And your choice is your birthright. You do not have to do what somebody is telling you that you have to do. You only have to listen to yourself, listen to your heart, listen to your soul, and really anchor in on your energy and come back to yourself, come back home to yourself. That is your birthright. It is your birthright to control your reality. That is your free will that nobody can take from you. Nobody, unless we give that power. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, even if you want me to touch on any other topics, do let me know in the comments. And with that being said, I love y'all so much, and I'll see y'all on the next. Peace.